Hey everybody, today we're going to look at lesson 17, complex sprite movement. So we're going to start right on task 2. It says using the counter pattern with a sprite's x and y property makes a sprite move smoothly across the screen. In this program, the counter pattern is being used with the sprite's velocity x property instead. So let's take a look and predict what we think will happen. So we have our sprite created up here. I don't see an animation with it, so it's probably just going to be that gray block. Now it has sprite velocity x, so it means we're going to be moving from side to side. And remember, in the draw loop, in this anything in this green draw loop, each time it runs, something else is going to happen. So basically, with this, each time it runs, you're going to add 0.1 to the velocity. So that means each time it runs, it's going to go faster and faster and faster. So the speed is going to increase. Oops. From side to side. So let's take a look. Starting off slow, and then it picks up speed. Not picking up speed too quickly, but you could tell that it was moving faster. The bigger this number is, the faster that will pick up speed. All right, task 3. This time it says this program already makes a car move across the screen, but it's going very slowly. Use the counter pattern with the sprite's velocity x property to make the car speed up. So right now you can see that the car is moving at 0.2. We want it to speed up. So again, it's moving across the screen, so we're going to grab our sprite's velocity x. I'm going to put it underneath the background in there. And I'm going to, there's a couple different ways you can do it. You can add the counter pattern in, or you can type it in. So you could say, well, first I'm going to change it to car. And we can type in car.velocity x plus 1, or you can put in the counter. Instead of typing it in, you can just use your counter and then just go back to sprite's velocity x, and then we can play around with some numbers. Maybe we'll just add 1 to start and see, but don't forget to call it car, and let's see what happens. Okay, so you can see how it started off really slow at the 0.2, and then it increased and took off. If you don't want it to go that quickly, maybe you could try 0.5. Still picking up speed, but you can see it a little bit longer. But you can play around with those numbers. All right, so we're going to practice that this unit, or this lesson, I should say. All right, so right now we have a rock that's slowly moving down the screen. We want it to look like a falling rock. The rock should speed up as it falls down the screen. Can you use the same counter pattern with the velocity y inside the draw loop? So it says use the counter pattern with the sprite's y velocity to make it speed up as it falls. Again, that'll be happening inside your draw loop. And then challenge, can you make the rock spin? Yeah, we can. All right, so sprite's velocity y. It's a rock. And again, instead of using grabbing all the different codes, you could, in the different blocks, you could just type in rock dot velocity y plus 1. And if you hit enter, those blocks will be in there. So just something else that you could do. All right, let's see what happens. All right, so it did start to take off again. If you don't want it to move so fast, maybe we'll try 0.5 so we can just see what's happening a little bit easier. Okay, so it started off slow and then sped up. Now, if a rock's falling, chances are it's going to be spinning. So we're going to want to grab that code as well. So what you're going to want to do is grab the sprite's rotation. Now, the spinning isn't going to increase. You can either put this right at the top, or you can put it inside your draw loop. It doesn't matter. but it'll be the rock. Rotation speed, maybe we want it to, maybe we'll say 4. Okay, there it is. It's speeding up and it's also spinning. All right, so that's it. Let's go on to 5. This program makes a bubble rise up out of the water. Can you make it get faster as it rises? So here's the bubble rising. If we want it to increase, go faster as it's going up, we have to think about the fact we're using the y, the velocity y again. However, if we're going up, we're going to be decreasing. So let's play around with this one. So it's a bubble, and we want its velocity y to actually decrease because we're moving up. I know things are backwards with the y, but if you notice as my arrow moves up, look underneath where it says show grid, you'll see the y value is getting smaller. So we're going to want to use subtraction. Again, you can either pull these blocks over like I'm doing, or you can type them in. So bubble, and we're subtracting this time. So maybe we'll try -1 and just see what happens. Ooh, really takes off there. I don't know if it would be moving that quickly. So let's slow it down a little bit. Why don't we do 0.25? And again, you can play around with these. As you create your games, you're going to be using some of these different effects. All right. For task number 6. So you've had some practice speeding things up. Now we're going to do the same thing, but backwards. We're going to slow things down a bit. So the car is going to run into the water. You'll need to use the counter pattern to slow it down. So use the sprite.velocity x block with a counter pattern to slow the car down by 0.25 as it moves across the screen. So let's see what's happening first. All right, so we don't want the car to hit the water. We want it to slow down. So the speed is starting off at 10. We want to slow it down. So again, it's velocity x because it's moving across the screen underneath all my background stuff. Change it to car. If we want it to slow down, then we're going to subtract. So we're going to slow the speed down. So the car's velocity is going to start at 10, and let's slow it down. They said let's follow the directions, by 0.25 as it moves across the screen. So minus 0.25. All right, let's see what happens. All right, it's getting close to the water. Now it's backing way up. All right, so let's see what else we need to do. What do you think will happen when the car finally stops? Challenge, add code that makes the car slow down only if its velocity x is greater than 0. See that word if? That tells me we'll use one of those blue conditional blocks. So right now, it's slowing down. It looks like it's going to stop, but then it goes the other way. Because you got to think, the number line doesn't stop. Okay, it doesn't stop at 0 right now. If you wanted it to stop, you would actually need to put in code that makes it stop. But for now, it's decreasing. So right now it's negative, and it's taking off into the negative, so it's moving back that way. All right, so it says add code that makes the car slow down only if its velocity x is greater than 0. So that means once the car stops, you stop decreasing its velocity x. You stop decreasing the speed. So again, that if, add code that makes the car slow down only if the velocity x is greater than 0. That should be a hint. So if the car's speed is greater than 0, it's velocity x because we're moving across. So if the car's velocity x is greater than 0, then we do these things. Then we decrease the speed. All right, let's see what happens. And there it is, it stopped. It didn't keep going backwards because it hit a speed of 0. It stopped. So it didn't want it to go backwards. All right. So again, if you didn't have this conditional statement, it would just keep going backwards. All right. Simulating gravity. In the last level, you slowed down the car with the sprite velocity x block and counter pattern. Almost looked like the car was getting pulled to the left. If you use the same pattern with the sprite's velocity y block, it'll look like your sprite is always being pulled down, which is exactly what gravity does. So it says, do this. The rock is thrown in the air but never falls back down. Oop, it should be coming back down. So use the sprite.velocity y block with the counter pattern to make the rock slow down, then fall in the other direction. So it's going to be really similar to what we were doing with the car prior to adding that conditional statement in, because it would have just kept going. That's exactly what we want to happen. It does say to experiment with different values in your counter pattern. Do you want the rock to slow down quickly or gradually? What looks most realistic to you? And then we can discuss it. Because you do want things to look realistic when you're creating these games. I know that we're kind of these are very basic what we're doing, but as you move through, even beyond this class, you want things to be as realistic as possible. All right, so right now, the rock's going up. We want it to come back down. So we want to add code in that's going to make it come back down like it would if there were gravity. So since we're dealing with moving up and down the screen, we're going to use our velocity y. All right, so now think about what you want to happen. Right now, it starts off, right now before we put that in, it started off going up by -10. That was its velocity, so it's moving up fairly quickly. And it is rotating. All right, well, we want it to go up and then come back down. So if we actually add, since it's a negative number, if we add, it's going to eventually make it go the other way. So the rock's velocity y, we're going to add to it because we're working backwards, right? If you wanted it to keep going that way, you would keep subtracting from a negative. But if we add to the negative, it's going to eventually hit 0 and come back this way. All right, so our rock's velocity y. And why don't we try adding, 1 and see what happens. So when you hit reset and run, it goes up a little, but not very far. So maybe we slowed it down a little too fast. So maybe let's try 0.5. And it did say to play around with it. You want it to look like someone tossed it in the air. Tossed it up and coming back down. Okay, that's not bad. If you wanted to go further up the screen, maybe try something even smaller, like 0.15. Goes up, you're tossing in there, and coming back down. And as it starts to come down, you'll see that it picked up speed. Okay. I'm actually going to pause there and continue on with the next video.